Before airplanes, before highways, before shipping containers. A world where the distance between Rome and China could take years to traverse. And yet, somehow, these civilizations touched. How? Through what we call today the Silk Road, a name that suggests a single road, but in reality, it was something far greater. A sprawling superhighway of culture, commerce, and ideas. It was not made of asphalt, but of caravan routes, desert paths, and sea lanes crisscrossing half the known world. This was the internet of the ancient world, a vast web where goods were exchanged, but more importantly, knowledge and beliefs traveled, forever reshaping civilizations. And so, let us back in time, not only to see the luxury of silks or the spices that flavored emperors' feasts, but to understand how this forgotten superhighway shaped our modern world in ways we rarely realize. We often picture the Silk Road as a neat line on a map, stretching from the Chinese capital of Chang'an to the bustling markets of Rome. But this image is a simplification, a distortion even. True Silk Road was a network, a constellation of routes stretching thousands of miles across mountains, deserts, and oceans. There was no single road to follow. Instead, merchants, monks, and diplomats threaded their way through countless pathways. Across the Taklamakan desert, one of the harshest landscapes on Earth, where oasis cities like Kashgar and Dunhuang became lifelines for weary travelers. Over the Pamir Mountains, often called the roof of the world, where caravans trudged through snow-capped passes at dizzying altitudes. Along the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean, where ships carried silk, spices, and ivory across the waves, linking Africa, India, and the Middle East. Through Central Asian steppes, where nomadic tribes not only raided but also facilitated trade, demanding tribute or offering protection. The diversity of routes meant the Silk Road was never static. Like a river branching into countless streams, it adjusted to politics, climate, and opportunity. If war blocked one road, caravans would find another. If disease or bandits struck, merchants shifted paths to safer terrain. What made this sprawling network possible? First, the rise of powerful empires that offered relative stability. The Han Dynasty in China, the Parthians and later Sassanids in Persia, the Kushans in Central Asia, and eventually Rome, all controlled critical sections. Each empire had something to gain by keeping trade flowing, and so they built roads, stationed soldiers, and created systems of taxation to encourage it. Second, the demand for luxury goods. The Roman elite hungered for silk, a fabric so fine and mysterious that senators once worried it was corrupting Roman virtue. In China, horses from the Fergana Valley were prized as heavenly steeds, essential for military campaigns. India exported spices that flavored meals across continents. The hunger for these rare goods created wealth beyond imagination. Finally, the Silk Road transcended previous trade efforts because it was sustained across centuries. Unlike short-lived trade routes that collapsed with the fall of a kingdom, the Silk Road adapted and survived multiple rises and falls of empires. It became not just a road, but an enduring system, an artery of civilization. Every empire that touched the Silk Road saw it as a source of power and sometimes of peril. For Rome, silk became a symbol of luxury and status. Senators and generals draped themselves in shimmering garments that seemed almost otherworldly. Yet the obsession with silk drained Roman gold, sparking debates in the Senate. Some argued that Rome's hunger for Eastern luxuries weakened its economy. For Persia, geography was destiny. Sitting between East and West, Persia became the middleman, taxing caravans and profiting from trade that passed through its deserts and cities. The Persian Royal Road, stretching 2,700 kilometers, became one of the great arteries of ancient commerce. Control of this road meant wealth and influence, and it became a constant prize in wars between empires. The Han Dynasty of China understood that securing its western borders was key to prosperity. The Han launched campaigns into Central Asia to secure horses and protect merchants. They set up military outposts and colonies, extending their influence far beyond the Great Wall. It was not just silk they exported, but also Chinese paper, lacquerware, and technologies that spread like wildfire. Then came the Kushans, a lesser-known empire that sat at the crossroads of India, Central Asia, and China. They acted as cultural brokers, spreading Buddhism along the Silk Road. Monks traveled with caravans, establishing monasteries that became both spiritual centers and trading hubs. But the Silk Road was not just about goods and profits. It was also about the exchange of powerful ideas. Buddhism spread from India into Central Asia, then into China and eventually Japan, transforming entire civilizations. Christianity and later Islam also found pathways along the Silk Road, each reshaping cultures as they moved. Technologies like papermaking and gunpowder flowed westward, revolutionizing societies in ways that would only be fully realized centuries later. The strategic importance of the Silk Road sparked conflicts. Armies marched not only to conquer land, but to control trade corridors. Cities rose to glory because of their position on the route. Samarkand, Bukhara, Palmyra, only to fall into ruin when the currents of trade shifted. The Silk Road was the bloodstream of empires. To control it was to hold power. To lose it was often the beginning of decline. The Silk Road may have faded from maps, but its legacy still surrounds us. Look at your dinner table. The spices in your kitchen, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, once traveled the Silk Road. The noodles you eat may trace their origins back to ancient exchanges between China and the Mediterranean. Tea, coffee, rice, bread, all influenced by centuries of cultural blending along these trade routes. Art and architecture, too, bear the fingerprints of Silk Road encounters. The domes of Islamic architecture were inspired by Byzantine forms. Buddhist cave paintings in Dunhuan depict influences from Indian, Persian, and even Greek traditions. The mixing of motifs created art forms that were not purely East or West, but something richer, something global before globalization. Even our languages carry echoes. Words like sugar, cotton, and orange traveled across languages as the goods themselves moved across continents. But the Silk Road offers lessons beyond culture. Its rise and fall is a cautionary tale about interconnectedness. The very network that spread wealth also spread disease. The Black Death, which decimated Europe in the 14th century, likely traveled along Silk Road routes, carried by fleas on merchant caravans. Trade created resilience, but also vulnerability. And when new sea routes emerged in the age of exploration, the Silk Road's importance diminished. Empires that had thrived on land-based trade, like the Central Asian Khanates, collapsed, unable to adapt to the new maritime world. The story of the Silk Road reminds us that no system, however powerful, is immune to disruption. And yet, the Silk Road refuses to be forgotten. Its legend continues to capture imaginations today. In the 21st century, China's Belt and Road Initiative openly invokes the Silk Road's memory. Highways, railways, and ports are being built across Asia, Africa, and Europe with the ambition of reviving a global trade network. The echoes of history are unmistakable, a new attempt to stitch continents together through commerce and infrastructure. But the lessons of the past must not be ignored. The ancient Silk Road shows us the benefits of connectivity, wealth, cultural exchange, innovation, but also the dangers, dependency, conflict, and inequality. Modern global supply chains are just as vulnerable to disruption as ancient caravans were to bandits or storms. Why does the Silk Road continue to fascinate us? Perhaps because it speaks to something timeless in human nature. The urge to connect, to exchange, to explore beyond horizons. It is a story of ambition and curiosity, of greed and generosity, of empires and ordinary merchants who carried not just goods, but stories, ideas, and dreams. The Silk Road was not merely a trade route. It was the world's first superhighway of civilization. And though centuries have passed, Its spirit endures, reminding us that in every age, we are bound together by the roads we build and the journeys we dare to take. From forgotten deserts to bustling ports, from emperors to humble traders, the Silk Road bound together the ancient world in ways still visible today. It was never just about silk. It was about connection, about the human desire to reach across borders and create something larger than ourselves. And so, as we travel the highways of the modern age, we walk in the footsteps of those who once carried silk, spices, and secrets across a superhighway that was never forgotten, because it still lives in us. Don't miss the next chapter of history. Hit subscribe.